What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I want to talk to you about one of the biggest stars to shine out of UFC 249. And it's not a name that you would think about. Heck, he didn't even compete on the card. But I want to talk about the greatness of Stipe Miocic, the current UFC heavyweight champion. Now, Stipe shines because of the performance of one Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou at UFC 249 faced off against a scary Jairzinho Rozenstruik and literally walked through him in a 24 second knockout. It was incredible. But you kind of have to think about Stipe, right? And let's look at the credentials of one Stipe Miocic. He's a firefighter by trade, one, but he has the most defenses of the UFC heavyweight title. He lost the UFC heavyweight title to Daniel Cormier and basically beat Cormier for that title in a return match and knocked him out. But the reason why Stipe stands out is because he had already faced one Francis Ngannou and literally schooled him. I mean, it was almost like a black belt in jiu-jitsu rolling with a white belt, and he was just kind of toying with him. He was literally playing with his food. Now, obviously, Ngannou was a different fighter back then. There was a bit of mojo and hype that Ngannou had with him going into that fight with Stipe, but that soon eroded, and Francis Ngannou after that fight with Stipe had to get his mojo back again, right? And then obviously Jairzinho Rozenstruik, my goodness, he's the guy who was losing by all intents and purposes to Alistair Overeem, and out of nowhere hits Overeem, and literally Overeem, the most technical striker in the UFC heavyweight division ever, and just busted his lip, like literally wide open. It looked like a horror movie. So with that all being said, there is a potential talk of a Stipe Francis Ngannou basically sequel. And I don't see how it could come any different than the way that it did the first time. And it's crazy because, yes, Francis Ngannou has this crazy power, almost the mythology of a young Mike Tyson in his prime. But there's something about Stipe being a more complete fighter than Francis, and he was when in their first encounter, and he is now. So I don't see it going any differently. But then again, Stipe has been on hiatus because he's suffered injuries stemming from the training and the actual fight with Daniel Cormier. So with that all being said, we're looking at a hampered Stipe Miocic going into a potential title fight with Francis Ngannou should he return. So it's just crazy. But again, obviously, kudos to Francis Ngannou for hitting that crazy knockout in 24 seconds of Jairzinho Rozenstruik. At one of the biggest, at least in the hyperbole of MMA, the biggest UFC card, despite the fact there were no fans in the arena. This was the first post-COVID-19 event of the year in terms of, I guess, traditional sports, right? If you consider MMA as a traditional sport, which I happen to. But it's just crazy because I think Francis Ngannou's accomplishments that night just showed the greatness of Stipe Miocic, because Stipe Miocic in their first outing literally, he didn't tear through him like Francis did Rozenstruik, but Stipe basically took Ngannou to school. So what is going to happen should they meet again in the octagon for the UFC heavyweight title? Time will tell, but again, I can't help but trumpet the praise of one Stipe Miocic because, he essentially made Francis Ngannou look a bit of a fool. But that's my take on it. I definitely want to hear your guys's. This has been According to Woods, and I'm out.